Hello there, Seraphim 17 once again. This is my Nioh level 1 fists and knees run. We're entering into the Ocean Roars again, and a very long boss fight against Umibozu, which normally I would use the masks that do the flame attack, and I would use various different fire implements, but of course this is a different kind of run, so I did this fight a little differently. A couple of things to bear in mind here. I'm going to light all 3 torches so that I never have to contend with the minions and it's just me and the boss. It'll make my life easier and it'll hopefully make it a bit more streamlined. Secondly, you cannot light your fists and get the power bonus from the torches, which I found to be quite interesting. I was hoping that I could light my fist, but it didn't give me any benefits. I also lit the Kusarigama and then tried to do the knee attack, but none of the fire was inherited to the knee attack because it's classed, I think, as a melee attack, a standard unharmed attack rather than part of the Kusarigama's move. So instead of getting a bonus, all I did was add an additive to the fight and have to contend with 2 things, which was kind of annoying. I also had a very interesting fight against him where he was 1 hit away from death and I ended up dodging away from a move. I was running away from it to get out of the range of it, and when I let go of run, I got a negative edge roll and it dashed me off the edge and I died. Very similar to what happened in my blind playthrough when I came here. My opinions of this boss haven't changed. I still think it's a piece of shit, and it's just because of the arena. It's the situational awareness of the arena. I don't think you should be able to fall the way you can. It just leads to unnecessary nonsense, especially when you consider all the factors and the variables. But there are a few things you can do in spite of it, which is quite cool, but it's hard to get any kind of consistency with. You can fall off the edge of the arena, trigger a plunging attack, hit Umibozu for good damage, and get back on the platform if it lands correctly. But I tried to do it repeatedly, and I got it maybe 3 out of 5 attempts. The other 2 attempts were death. So it wasn't a consistent strategy, but you can do a plunging attack on this boss and it does great damage, even with fists. Once again, hard to control though where you land and if you even get that weird bobble back onto the platform, so you're not going to see me doing it. What you are going to see is a mixture of the fist talisman and the Kusarigama knee attack, and it's going to be long, so get your popcorn guys, it's going to take a while. I see a lot of people disliking this mission though on forums and things, and I don't really understand that. I think the mission itself is great. It's precarious, it's dangerous, it's different, it's got some mystique to it, and it's really obscure in its design. You don't have to do any of this in this level, you just have to go to the boss fight if you wanna. You can do that, and you can beat this level in like 4 minutes, or you can explore and just look on this kind of weird structural graveyard of ships and arcs and things and have a lot of fun. I appreciate people don't like it because of the pitfalls. Nioh is a surprisingly safe game for the most. Like, I didn't fall off too much when I played this game. The game even has a kind of safeguard in place, so when you're attacking near an edge, you don't fall. The game kind of saves you, but if you're not attacking then you can fall. But it's not like Dark Souls where almost every single precipice is begging to pull you off, with almost an uncanny magnetism. This game has that occasionally, but it doesn't have it to the same kind of fervour that the Souls series does. So I think the reason that a lot of people dislike this so much is because it's one of those places where you're going to fall off a bunch of times because you didn't realise that there was no floor there, or you didn't realise there was a hole. And that stuff is frustrating when it's the only instance of it in the game. The rest of the game is pretty much abyss free, whereas this is full of it, and it can definitely get really annoying. But this is Umibozu, a guy from the folklore, as is much of the bosses and enemies and what have you, and characters from this game. He is also in One Piece, somebody told me, and I can't quite remember what part of it that was, but it's been a long time since I read it. Up to as far as it was anyway. Okay, so random glitch in Adobe Premiere has made me lose the last 12 minutes of this commentary, so I'm not best pleased and feel like I'm going to repeat everything I fucking said, which really gets on my tits because I'm not a fan of repeating myself, even though it's inevitable when you talk at length on videos as many times as I have. Why does it do it? I don't know. You stop it and it starts playing instead of stopping, and it doesn't generate the audio. It's a fucking nightmare, but it happened. Here we are. This fight sucks dick. I didn't say that last time, but I'm going to say it now because fuck it. It's too long, and I hate it. Oh, I can't do it now. This is why I'm like a one-take kind of guy. You know, I'm not saying that the commentary was good. I'm just saying that it was perfect for what it was, which was this fight, this video, and now it's disappeared and it will never be heard. So I get to waste my life now when I could be commentating the next one and getting back to recording, doing the better parts of these projects. So what did I say? Umibozu fight is long, and there's no way of making it quicker under the restrictions that I've given myself. So what is going to happen, folks, is I had a really good run where I got him down to a sliver of life, and then I dodged and got a negative edge and it knocked me off the edge. Not too sure if I've told you that, but that's what happened. It was really frustrating, it was tedious and annoying, but it was beautiful and perfect and everything wrong with this fight. So what I'm going to do is I've got 2 bits of footage. I have the first phase from that awesome run, which is what you're watching. And I say awesome run, there's nothing special about the run. It's just a run where I'm actually using the knees and the fists and doing very little damage and getting incredibly bored. And then the second half of the run is a different run that was a successful one, where the first half wasn't as good. So that's all you're seeing here, guys. But unfortunately it's going to last a long time, because I vouched not to use the masks, and I vouched not to use fire. Even though I'm going to use the torch later on just to show you that it doesn't transfer the attributes to the knees, it only gives it to the blade of the weapon and the weight. Which is really strange, but there it is. So I'm going to talk about some other things, because I can't go back through what I was just talking about, because it was boring enough the first time. I'm going to talk about Running Man. So, if you've never heard of Running Man, shame on you, how dare you, but it might be something that you've not come across. You might know it as a cheesy, late 80s action movie featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger in a dystopian future where people essentially go onto a show called Running Man, which is a little bit like Big Brother, only more productive. And criminals are let loose and chased through this, like, abandoned area of LA or something, and they're hunted by these professional stalkers. Each of them has their own gimmick and their own flair and their own design to make them larger than life and absolutely ridiculous. And then there is a live studio audience, and all the crowd are betting on the results and getting prizes. It's very satirical in its way of showing just how, you know, dehumanized some of the game shows and some of the TV shows we make are, and it's just a logical extension of them. And it's a movie that I watched a lot when I was a kid, because I was a very big Arnold Schwarzenegger fan. And it's a fun movie. It's a dumb movie, but it's a fun movie. There's a lot of great one-liners, there's some fun set pieces. It's just one of those classic action movies that I really, really enjoy. And the other day I had the opportunity to read the book, because if you don't know, once again, the film is loosely, and I mean really loosely, based off of a story written by Stephen King under his pseudonym, which is it Richard Bachman, I think he's called? And he wrote it back in, like, I think 1983. So I got it on my Kindle, decided to read it, and I read it the other night, and I liked it a lot. I don't think it's a great book. I think it's got great parts, and some of the prose are nice, but as far as it goes, it's got a nice amount of tension, but it's not something that I would recommend you go out and read, and it's not something that I think is going to blow anybody's minds. But it was nice to see the contrast between the two. I enjoyed it, I think, as much as I did, because I was referencing everything to the movie, and I was seeing how it was different and being like, oh, that's that, oh, cool, and stuff. So immediately, to begin with, the character of Ben Richards is 28 years old, which is just a little bit younger than Arnold Schwarzenegger was in that movie, and he's scrawny, which is completely nothing like a former Mr. Olympia. So immediately we're off to a great start here, where we've got this kind of sardonic, witty and cynical, but intelligent guy who is nothing like Arnold Schwarzenegger in that film, who was framed for not wanting to kill civilians and all that shit. And you're like, wow, this is very different. And it's in a future where there is a lot of unemployment, there's a lot of poverty, a lot of pollution. It's kind of a pretty bad place. And Ben Richards has a wife and a child, and his child has chronic asthma and some kind of potential chest infection, maybe pneumonia. And because he can't work, he can't buy the medication, which is really expensive, to try and help her, and of course his daughter's going to die. The only way that they're currently getting money is by his wife whoring herself out as a prostitute, which is killing the guy inside, which I think is kind of understandable for anybody who's ever loved a partner. And his only choice is to go on these suicidal shows where you do these ridiculous things that help kind of gentrify these neighbourhoods, get rid of the poor people, and try and thin the numbers and control the populace and everything. So he applies for Running Man, and it's nothing like what it is in the movie. There's a bunch of tests, there's a bunch of aptitude stuff, and instead of it being this isolated area what they run through that's covered in cameras and they're hunted by these larger than life characters, it's literally just he goes on the run in the real world. He goes on the run to see how far he can get, and every day he has to mail them some footage of him talking to the camera to update them on his situation, which Ben Richards thinks is the way that they use to track you down, which is almost certainly what they do. And of course, this is the 80s. He's writing about the future, so the technology in it is not exactly what the future became, but it's that kind of awesome 80s inspired what he thinks the future might be, but it's not a massive theme of the book, so you can kind of just roll with it. So once he passes the aptitude test, there are 2 people that go for the Running Man competition, and off they go. And they're kind of sent out with a 12-hour head start, and they've just got to survive from the hunters. And the book is really interesting in as much as that it doesn't really give you any other perspective. So there's no cutting to what Killian and the people are doing who are trying to hunt. There's no perspective of the crowd being played up and the prizes and everything. There's no cutting to his family to see what the struggle is while they watch their husband, to give us those moments of dramatic irony and things. None of that really happens in the book. It's very focused. It's all with Richards the entire time as he's fleeing. And he's a capable guy, but it's also a very realistic kind of hero, even though he's not a hero. So there's no moments of him disarming people and doing badass Arnold Schwarzenegger things and gunning people down and massive epic, moments of manliness. That's just not here. It's a very grounded, very real, desperate man on the run trying to do what he can to feed his family, essentially. And he's obviously capable, but it never really goes into why he's capable, other than he's lived a pretty tough life, but he's also smart, so he's by no means a fool. And because he's a survivor, it all keys into these decisions that he makes. And another interesting part of this that's completely different to the movie is Killian is black, which I thought was quite awesome. Killian in the movie is the most shit-talking, wannabe Frank Sinatra kind of douchebag you could ever want for the role. It's the perfect image. But in the book, complete contrast to it. Very similar mannerisms and everything, but different in so many ways. And I think it really shows kind of the racial undertones of the early 80s, because of course in America it's probably still quite bad, not quite as bad as it was before, and hopefully it's better now, but racism exists and it's a big thing. There's a lot of cultures are formed around people being different, and there was definitely a lot of that stuff in the book, which I'm wondering if it was just his idea of the future being more of a totalitarian kind of ostracized community, or if it was a reflection of the racist times and stuff. But it's kind of interesting because he found these characters that helped him kind of flee and continue on his path and do what needed to be done. But there was, the tension was nice because he was seeing everything as a threat. His paranoia was triggering, and I think the paranoid moments were better than the actual active moments of being chased. Because when the actual hunt began and he was being attacked and he was driving away in cars and stuff and he was evading his pursuers, that stuff wasn't as good, I didn't feel. The tension was great, the build-up, but when it did kick off, I don't know if it was his inexperience with writing that stuff or my tastes when it comes to action and kind of that kind of thrilling pace. It didn't really hit it for me. I liked it was grounded, I liked that it made sense, there was no suspension of any real disbelief, not like the stuff that I write, where it's essentially fucking Die Hard in any vicinity of any place where a dude takes down 50 dudes doing bicycle kicks and all kinds of crazy backflips behind cover, dueling double guns and stuff. But it was still fun, and it was still enough to keep you reading. And then it kind of goes a little bit crazy at the end, and I expected it, but I didn't expect the twist, which is not much of a twist, you can kind of see it coming. But there is a flashpoint at the end of the book where there's an interesting proposition made, and I kind of thought he was going to go for it, but he doesn't. and then there's the unraveling of what happens, and it kind of ends in a really brutal, just harsh way that is pretty much telegraphed from the very beginning of the book, which I definitely appreciated. But I find it interesting that when you really look into it, there was nothing of all that, you know, actiony, kind of thrillery, pursuey moments. There was nothing like something you'd see in The Fugitive. There was nothing like what you'd see in Running Man. There was a couple of altercations where he used a gun to attack a few cops that were chasing him, but it was the kind of the, you know, really quick get through it onto the next section, because King is apparently an author who, he doesn't really dwell too much on the action. The action is just kind of there to push the plot along and to push the development along. Like, they spent longer kind of extrapolating on Ben's mental state when he was doing the tests than they did any of the real thrilling pursuit, which once again is probably just a sign of his taste and his style when it comes to writing. Because let's face it, if you've read a lot of King, you appreciate that this is a man who likes to rabbit on a little bit about the most inconsequential things, and sometimes you kind of con yourself into thinking that it's world building and it's character development, and then other times it leads to nothing and meant nothing. It's just something he wanted to talk about, and there's nothing wrong with that, because, you know, writing's very narcissistic. It has to be for it to be successful. You know, you're essentially sharing a really intimate part of yourself, and you're sculpting a world that's essentially your baby. So it was interesting to see just how kingy it was as a book, as opposed to just how Arnold Schwarzenegger the movie became. And that's the end of the video, guys, so I'm really sorry that I couldn't talk all about Umibozu, because I kind of did in the first run, but I can't repeat myself. It goes against my very nature. So thank you for watching, and you take care now.